Hi, I'm Marty Chan, the 2011 Writer-in-Residence at the Edmonton Public Library. Welcome to Virtual Writers Corner. This is our special summer edition of our regular monthly live writer series, where we feature talented writers of different genres coming in to talk about the story behind their work and the story behind their careers. Today, I'm especially pleased to have Gayleen Froese. Gayleen is a novelist and musician from Western Canada. She has worked as a radio writer, a talk show host, and a communications officer. Her first novel, Touch, was published by New West Press, which is based right here in Edmonton. And in 2011, earlier this year in the spring, she launched the sequel to that novel, Grayling Cross. She's also released 3 albums and performed in showcases across Canada. In fact, her first CD, Obituary, won the Undiscovered Artist Award from CBC Radio. Gayleen, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for making the time to join me.
Oh, thank you.
Well, excellent. So, now we first met, actually, at
Yes.
a Chapters bookstore, right?
We did.
Yes, and it was for Book Television's version of the 3-day novel contest.
Yes.
And those of you who don't know, that 3-day novel contest pitted 12 writers against each other in a library where we had to write the first draft of our short novel within 3 days while customers were looking over our shoulders. Gayleen not only completed her novel, but she also won Book Television's version of the 3-day novel contest. So my first question to you, Gayleen, is what was it like writing in a fishbowl?
You know, I thought that people were going to be all up in our business. And they were a little bit in yours, I remember that. But most of us didn't have that much trouble. People were very polite. The one man who approached me, he walked up and he said, "How much does it cost to use the computers?" And I said, "Well, they're free, but the human cost is very high.
Oh, perfect.
And also there's no internet connection." And then he sort of looked at me, he kind of wandered away. I never saw him again. But, you know, I found people were actually, I was in the washroom at one point, and I don't know what you guys were like with your washroom, but us girls, we knew intellectually that this was not our washroom, but we had taken a certain possessiveness over it.
Okay.
Emotionally, you know, like this was our washroom at home. And so if we were in there brushing our teeth or something and someone walked in, we would sort of give them a look like they'd walked into our washroom at home, like, "Who are you and what are you doing in here?" And so I had looked at some poor stranger this way, and she was looking at me, and I'm sure I looked deranged because I was. You know, I hadn't slept in days, and, you know, I'm giving her the stink eye for no reason, and she's frightened. And I had just enough sense to realize that I had made some social error. So I said, "Look, I'm one of the writers, I'm sorry, you know." And she said, oh my Lord. And then she couldn't do enough for me. You know, "Can I buy you a coffee? Is there anything you need? Do you have a headache? I have aspirin?" You know, like she was just the nicest person. And really, most people were like that when they realized who I was, that I was sitting out there doing that. They just had, you know, nothing but respect for what we were doing, or if not respect, pity. You know,
pity,
at least.
yes, pity's a good one.
And I was so willing to take pity at that point. That was fine.
Now, had you done the 3-day novel contest before, or was this your first time trying to write something in such a short period of time?
That was my first time, yeah.
Yeah?
But I worked in radio, and it's a very, very fast, high-stress environment. You'll have over 100 active clients at one time, and any of them can call at any moment and say, "I have to be on the air in an hour." They've got to be on the air in an hour, so off you go.
All right, excellent. Now, outside of the something like the 3-day novel contest, how would you describe your sort of regular writing day, your process?
Writing day, that's funny. The idea of having a day to write. I mean, I have a day job, so, and most Canadian authors, I think, do. My process, there really isn't one. I mean, it's about stealing time. You know, I mean, if I'm sitting in a mediclinic waiting to see a doctor, you know, in that stupid little paper gown, I'll have my iPad on my lap and I'll be typing. You know, that's time I can use, right? If I'm waiting for a friend to show up at a restaurant and she's late, well, that's time I can use. So that's how it gets done.
And you use an iPad?
I do now.
Okay.
But you can use notebooks. I mean, you know, anything, it doesn't matter, or a netbook or whatever it is. But I mean, longhand's fine too. And I've written on the backs of receipts and
okay.
You know, the insides of Kleenex boxes. It doesn't matter, whatever.
Excellent. So I want to talk a little bit about your 2 novels, Touch and Grayling Cross. When you were working on Touch, did you know that you were going to write a sequel to it?
Everything I write, there's always the possibility that I would write a sequel to it. I loved detective fiction in particular when I was a kid. And what I loved best about it was that it had the possibility to follow characters and just come back to them and see more, and they're doing other things and spend more time with them. So I always write with the idea that, you know, I can come back to these characters and do other things and see them go other places and learn, and, you know. So that was always an option. Whether I was going to come back to this book or not, well, you know, I sold it to a publisher, and there was, you know, the thought that they might be interested in more, so I went ahead with that.
All right. Were there any challenges when you were planning out the sequel, trying to recapture sort of the magic of you know, the first novel and the characters, and going, hey, how do I get back to that?
Recapture the magic. I love your assumption that there was magic. That is very kind. Honestly, it's not about recapturing anything in as much as they moved on, you know? I mean, the Touch was over, and they moved to Edmonton, and they had changed. So I didn't want to go back anywhere. I just wanted to pick up with where they were at now, and you know, they were new people. And I never lost touch with them. I always know where my characters are. You know, if I finished writing a book about a character, I can tell you where they are and what they're doing now.
Okay.
So I knew what they were doing.
Okay. Now, speaking of knowing where you are, I mean, you are based here in Edmonton, and you've worked across Western Canada. My question to you is, what keeps you here in Western Canada, specifically here in Alberta?
Well, Edmonton, I think, offers a really nice balance in terms of opportunity to have access to, you know, other artists that are interesting, people who come to town that are interesting, opportunities like this. But still, you know, I love dogs. I have 3 dogs. I have a yard for my dogs. I can do that here. Do you watch Louis C.K.'s show?
Yes.
His HBO show?
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
The one where he was trying to buy a house?
Yeah.
It's $17 million. And a nice house, you know, but nothing spectacular. I look at Louis C.K. and I was amazed by this. The episode, for people who don't know, this I think of as a very successful man, you know, his own HBO series, well known as a stand-up comedian, you know, he sells out, you know, 1,000-seat theaters on tour everywhere he goes, but in the context of Manhattan, he's not that well known. He lives in quite a shabby apartment. He's just barely getting by. And I think, well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, you think, well, I'll move to the big city and then, you know, I'll be a big success. But there's always just another ladder that you get on when you get there. And I think Edmonton affords an opportunity to, and it's not necessarily even big fish, small pond, but it's just that you have to realize that it doesn't make you a big deal or a bigger deal that you're in Manhattan or London or anywhere else. It's the quality of the work that you do, not necessarily where you are. And Edmonton affords some really good opportunities to do things and see things, and to have a nice house and a yard and a good lifestyle.
And you've taken advantage of a lot of opportunities, not just in fiction writing, but you've also written songs,
yes.
CDs. So what do you love about writing songs? What does writing a song give you that writing a novel doesn't?
The way that I write songs in character too, actually. They're little pieces of fiction. But for me, when I write a song, it's about a moment. It's about just a brief expression of a thought or a feeling that someone has in an instant. You know, so it's a real focus on something and drawing all of the, you know, emotions and contradictions and everything out of that moment. Whereas a novel, obviously, is so much longer, has so much more scope. So it has less sort of potency, maybe, in terms of its immediate impact. It might have more impact once you sort of let it soak in. But songs give you that sort of instant hit. So I really enjoy writing that and also sharing that. And songs, of course, can be quicker to write. Sometimes they take forever. But they can be quicker to write and then quicker to share also with people. And I think people find it easier too sometimes to respond to songs. They can get them, whereas you give them a novel to read and it's like, okay, well, you know, not everyone reads all that quickly.
Yeah.
Some people just aren't readers, you know. So.
Great, thank you. Now, I know people are going to be watching this clip, maybe starting on their own novel. To those people watching, what would be one piece of advice you'd give to that person?
You know, there's this one thing that people keep saying to me, and I'm running out of nice. I try really hard. Like, I don't want to be one of those snotty artists who, like, well, he didn't say enough nice things to me, so I'll never speak to him again. You know, I just think that serves no one. That oversensitive thing. But this really does get to me when people say this. When they find out you've written a book, and they say, I'm sure you get this too, I've always wanted to be a writer. You hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I'm retired.
I've always wanted to be a writer. And it bothers me for two reasons. And one is the implication, I think, that, you know, my fairy god pen came floating in on a magic ream of paper and took me to righty land. And there were giant Cracker Jack boxes, and I pulled a novel out of one. And I was just so lucky, and they haven't been that lucky, you know. Whereas, in fact, I was, you know, sitting in a paper dress in the doctor's office with a pounding headache writing, because that's what I do, because that's how committed and driven I am. And that's what it takes, honestly. But the other thing is that we're just so lucky, and people don't get it. If writing is your art, you're lucky. You can do it anywhere. There's no high cost of admission. You don't have to buy an expensive instrument. You don't have to spend years learning a technique, your embouchure, you know, the right way to draw a string across. You're not going to practice and practice and practice every day and then be told when you're 12 years old that your hips are wrong and you'll never be, you know, great at your craft. That just, we don't have those barriers. We don't have to choose between buying groceries and buying a tube of paint. You know, we're just so fortunate. We don't have barriers. And so when people put up this barrier of, well, I've always wanted to be a writer, but, you know, I just, you know. No, I don't know. I don't know why you aren't. If you've always wanted to be one, just do it. That's all you actually have to do is do it. J.K. Rowling, I understand, wrote longhand, that first Harry Potter novel, and there's no reason why anyone, and she was raising kids by herself. I mean, I don't think you're busier than her. Just do it.
Okay, perfect advice. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of Virtual Writers Corner. I've been talking to Gayleen Froese, novelist and musician from Western Canada. If you want to get a hold of either of her novels, Touch or Grayling Cross, they're available here at the Edmonton Public Library and also at fine bookstores across Canada. If you want to hear Gayleen read an excerpt from her work, we do have a clip on the website. Just look for the link. And please, please, please join me when Writers Corner is back live and in person at the Stanley Milner Library last Sunday of September. That's September 25th. We'll be in the Stanley Milner, but in a different location. Stay tuned to this website for more details. I'll be joined by, young adult novelist Susan Juby will be joining me, and I hope you can join us. Until then, have a great summer.